Good evening, everybody. Welcome. My name is E.R. Anderson. I'm the executive director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is a nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books, and Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. We are delighted to be kicking off our Pride Month celebration with all of you, celebrating Yerba Buena, a book by Nina Lacour, in conversation with Casey McQuiston. We know that there are a ton of you here tonight, so we want you to shout out where you're watching from in the chat. Make yourselves at home. Tell us what your favorite Nina Lacour book is, what your favorite Casey McQuiston book is, and ask a ton of questions. So you can ask questions by clicking this button, the Ask a Question button, and putting it there, or you can ask a question in the chat, and I'll move it over so that Casey can work it into our conversation and interview. So I'll introduce Nina first. Nina is the Michael L. Prince award-winning and nationally best-selling author of Watch Over Me, We're Okay, Hold Still, and Everything Leads to You. She hosts the podcast Keeping a Notebook and teaches for Hamline University's MFA in Writing for Children and Young Adults program. A former indie bookseller and high school English teacher, she lives with her family in San Francisco. Yerba Buena is her adult debut, and as I told her, we have at Charis passed the galley around. It's tattered. Everybody loves it. So we were so excited to get to do this virtual launch with you. We're just really, we have been fans of your young adult work and really thrilled about this adult debut.
Oh, thank you.
And she's joined by Casey McQuiston, who is the New York Times bestselling author of One Last Stop, Red, White, and Royal Blue, and I Kissed Shara Wheeler, as well as a pie enthusiast. Born and raised in southern Louisiana, Casey now lives in New York City with Pepper, a poodle mix, and semi-pro personal assistant. So welcome, Casey. You are, of course, Charis's best-selling romance author, and we have many folks. I was saying you also are like our straight customers best-selling romance author, which I you cross all bounds and all genres. You're opening minds, and we are affiliated with Agnes Scott College now, which is a historic women's college, and you, I think, are the students' number one favorite author. So welcome to you both. This is truly very exciting for our communities, and we're just really glad to get to help celebrate this. So welcome to everyone watching at home, and kick back and enjoy the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I am so great. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm so happy to be doing this with you and seeing everybody in the chat and where you all are from. It's very exciting.
Yeah, everybody already making the chat very fun. Keep it going. And please don't forget to ask questions. I'm going to kind of like pepper them in throughout the hour that we're just hanging out. We're keeping it cute. We're keeping it casual, keeping it flowing. It's going to be very fun. But Nina, I am so excited to be here with you. When the event request came through, I was like, yes, no brainer, absolutely, checkbox. So how has the rollout for Yerba Buena been? I know it's been a long time coming for this one.
Yeah, it's been really fun. It's been eventful and just very. And so many different things. Like I've been writing this book for so long, as you know, almost 2 decades basically is when one of the characters first came to me. And so to finally let it out into the world is both terrifying and also exciting, and to be going out into the world for the first time really since COVID descended is also exciting and terrifying. So those are my adjectives.
Yeah, I love that. I know you love an adjective, but you also love a noun.
I do.
Was it Emilie or Sara who you came up with almost 20 years ago?
It was Sara who came to me first. I just had this vision of her, and also her younger brother Spencer. So for our audience members, it's a dual point of view story. It's third person, but we follow 2 characters as they grow up. And so one of them is Sara. She has this younger brother Spencer, and I I knew that something had happened. I knew that she had abandoned him in some way and that she was trying to make amends in some way and that something was haunting her and following her, but I didn't really know anything else at first, but that's where it started.
At what point did Emilie enter the picture?
Shortly thereafter, like I started exploring Sarah's character, and then I had this like other woman come to me and I was like, oh, Emilie, okay, and who was she? And it was confusing at first because I knew that she had a very different family and that she had a different kind of upbringing, and I didn't know how they would come together, but I guess I knew that then my work was to see how that happened.
Yeah. Immediately, I'm obsessed with this because I love hearing about character work. And it's interesting to hear you talk about Emilie and Sara kind of coming into existence in your mind separately. Because I always just think it's interesting to talk to somebody who's written a love story about whether you develop those characters sort of to complete each other, or you kind of like have this character and you're like, let me create their perfect partner, or if they just kind of like they grow on their own and you realize that they're meant to be together. So what was that process like for you?
Yeah, I mean, they were very much on their own, and they are on their own through most of the novel. Is to me, I see it as a story of like the work that we all need to do individually, of like growing up and coming to terms with the things that have happened in our lives, and figuring out how to be vulnerable and how to be open and how to be brave and all of these things in order to love another person as well as we can, and also allow ourselves to be loved by another person. So that was my that was the pursuit for me in the novel, was exploring how these two particular people would be able to reach that point. Yeah.
I love that. I'm also interested because I feel like you have they're two very different kinds of like lost girl, and I feel like they represent different kinds of like familial trauma in different shades, and also like very different kinds of perseverance. And so could you maybe talk a bit about what different kinds of perseverance look like to you when you're creating that in a character?
Oh, I love that so much. You're so good at this, Casey.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so like they're very, very different. So Sara is like a teen runaway. She's very driven, she's focused, she knows what she's going to do. She like she gets a job at a restaurant, and then she like works her way up. She bartends before she's 21. Like she's just like very purposeful and kind of like singularly focused. And then we have Emilie, who is like a drifter. Like she doesn't know what she wants, and so she'll dabble and she'll try some of this and some of that, and she'll just kind of like move with the tide, and things happen in her life and she like changes course because she doesn't want to like stop and look at it. But I think that actually that's both of their problems, is they don't want to stop and look at the things that are wrong, which is, I mean, many of our problems. I think I'll speak for myself. I'm like, God, what are 5 billion things I can do like to not do that, instead of being like, oh, I feel sad. So perseverance and they do it in different ways, but they certainly have like some similarities. And then and they both find a lot of purpose in work. And even though for Sara, like she knows what her work is going to be sooner than Emilie, like Emilie also finds a lot of purpose in like making things and working hard and figuring out, her passions. Yeah.
And I love that. I feel like you gave them both jobs that some people might consider sort of like frivolous jobs of like making pretty things or making like silly little cocktails or something. But when it's in their hands, it has all of this weight because it feels connected to like where they come from. So could you talk a bit about how you developed like what I mean, I don't know, did you know that they were going to be a bartender and a florist, or how was that?
Yeah. I mean, as you say that, I just have to say, it makes me think of like the delicious sandwich in One Last Stop. Like, I think that it's like, we all have these you know, like they may seem frivolous or, you know, not important, but like how important are these like things that we return to over and over again, right? Like a delicious sandwich, like something that offers comfort that we crave, and like, and you know, the same, like, I think that like allowing ourselves to love the things that we love and to pursue them without feeling any sort of like frivolity associated with it is so just such like a loving thing to do for oneself. So for me, like these are like those simple pleasures that keep me grounded or keep me just like enjoying my life. And so I always knew that Sara would be a bartender. That was like very clear to me, and probably because my wife is a wonderful bartender. She's not by you know, that's not her actual job, but it's a hobby and I get to benefit from it, which I and Emilie, though, like she does drift quite a bit, and I didn't know what she was going to do at first, and she takes a little while to find out what she's going to do, but she has her florist phase, which is like quite important to the plot and also like to her sense of herself. And then Sara like meets Emilie through her flowers. Like before she even sees Emilie, she falls in love with what Emilie has made. And so, you know, they were important, but for Emilie, like these things evolved a little bit more.
Right.
Working. Yeah. How about you? Do you have?
Well, it's interesting because this kind of reminds me of like something I was about to ask you, because I think that it's interesting reading you writing adult for the first time, because like when you're writing YA, you have characters that like have dreams and they have things that like as a writer you're like, I bet one day this kid is going to do this, and like with adult you get to like have them doing their thing, you know, or at least like finding their way to doing their thing, you know, kind of like Emilie. Like I think Emilie and August, like I describe August as a waitress, but that is, and like Emilie as a florist, but for neither of them, that is like where that's not where they're gonna end up, you know, like that's kind of a step on the way. But I don't know. It's interesting to do. I feel like with adult, I'm always like, oh, I know what this person is gonna be like pretty quickly as soon as I figure out their personality. And then with YA, it's actually a lot harder. Like I don't know what Char is going to be necessarily. I don't think she knows. So it's kind of fun with adult to have more fully formed characters. So you're like, oh, I know exactly what this person's like supposed to be doing. Yeah. I mean,
I can't let you mention Char without Wheeler, which is so wonderful. I'm sure that this crowd does not need to be told that, but I love it so much and was just really engaged throughout. And you just do such beautiful and brilliant and fun and daring things in this book. I love how difficult these characters are. I love how queer they are, and it's so wonderful. So here's my plug.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. I would hold up my copy of Yerba Buena, but I literally already mailed it to a friend who I was like, you need to read this, because I was talking to a friend who's like has Creole roots, but like grew up in California and feels like really disconnected from her Creole roots, but wants to like find them again. And we were talking about this and I was like, I have just the book for you.
Oh my gosh. Well, you should introduce us.
Yeah, no, I would love to. But yeah, do you want to talk a bit, not to like awkwardly segue, but would you like to talk a bit about the Creole influence in Emilie's character and kind of where you pulled that from?
Yeah, sure. So I am half Creole on my dad's side, and my family, they were part of the Great Migration. So they moved like in the late 40s from New Orleans to Los Angeles to have more opportunities and less, racial segregation and restrictions on the types of jobs and, ceilings for wage earning and all of that. And like your friend, like I have felt kind of disconnected, or just kind of peripherally connected, I guess, to my Creole heritage, because I was raised in Northern California, but all of my Creole family was in LA. And so I was very much like adjacent to all of the cultural aspects that they brought with them from New Orleans. And my dad, makes great gumbo, and so did my grandfather and my grandmother and my cousins, but the rest of them were in Los Angeles. But I just loved it when I was a kid, and like we would get together, especially with my grandparents' generations, for these like family parties, and they would like dance the second line and like listen to amazing like New Orleans music and have the parasols, and it was just like so fun and wonderful. And I felt like, gosh, like this is like this vibrant heritage that I have. And so it's always been something where it's just been, difficult for me to know like how to claim it, I guess, or how to, when I wasn't raised with like day in, day out, Creole-ness, I guess.
Right.
But, especially like as like I lost my grandfather 10 years ago, and he was such a huge part of my life. And then my grandmother died very shortly before I like sat down and wrote Yerba Buena in earnest. And I think just reflecting on them and how much they meant to me, all the stories they told me, how much like they really did shape the way that like I see the world. I was very excited to be able to pull that in through Emilie. And so something that's examined in the book is that Emilie's grandparents really were on this like path of like moving to Los Angeles after leaving everything behind in New Orleans. And like my grandparents, they moved into the housing projects in South Central, and then they bought their first house. I think their first one was in Compton, and then it was in Carson, and then they moved to Long Beach, and just had this amazing focus on like making a home for their family and making it as wonderful as they could. And so my dad helped me with a lot of his own childhood history and, where he lived. And it was just lovely. And I even used like lines from my grandparents' love letters in the book. So once I like gave myself permission to do that, I just went all in and really lifted quite heavily from life for Emilie's parts, which was really fun. I mean, I've written so many books by this point, but it's the first time that I allowed myself to bring in like that part of who I am.
Yeah. I mean, if I can just say selfishly for a minute, it was really exciting for me to read because, as my bio mentions, I'm from Southern Louisiana, and my family's not Creole, they're Cajun, which is like similar but different. And I have this big gator tattoo.
I love it.
And I am kind of like you, where I've written 3 books now, and August is from Louisiana, but I've kind of avoided ever pulling from like my Cajun background for books. And I don't know why. It's like, I do feel a little separated from it too, because I grew up in the city, and like my cousins used to make fun of my city accent and like, and everything. And it was just like reading a gumbo scene in a book. I cannot describe how exciting that was to me. I was like, oh, they're going to make a gumbo. They're going to make a gumbo. So thank you. Me to you, thank you for including all of that.
Thank you. I mean, it's so wonderful to hear that. I feel like from a craft perspective, like that's the sort of scene. So like kind of late in the novel, there's a scene where Emilie and her sister Colette make gumbo. And it was very fun to like enter that scene from a craft perspective, because I was like, making gumbo is like a day-long undertaking, and it's so many different steps. So it's like, how many steps am I going to include, and what does it all mean? And like, how am I going to describe it? What will I like skip over, and what will I focus on? And it was just really fun to like examine a relationship and be able to have that time, like where a character slows down and we can hear all of the thoughts, and like kind of mirroring like the long and multifaceted process of making gumbo in the emotional kind of arc of that day as well was super fun. I really like writing about food, it turns out.
I ate shows. Your books make me hungry. Speaking of, I'm going to pull a question from the Ask a Question that kind of flows beautifully from that. This person says, the most beautiful parts of Yerba Buena to me were your descriptions of the drinks and flower arrangements Sara and Emilie would make. It's so poetic and romantic and electric. What was it, a conscious decision to make their romance stem from their creative endeavors?
What a beautiful question. Thank you.
Yes.
Let's see. was it conscious? I don't think it was conscious. I think that was something that I really worked hard on. It was, well, Casey, I admire you so much for your romances. I struggle. Like it's not where it's not easy for me. And I saw like early up, like some people said that Everything Leads to You was their favorite of my books, which I love hearing because it was the most painful book for me to write. Like I just find romance really hard. And so, I knew that they were going to fall in love. I knew that was very, very important, but I felt much more like at ease with like the process of like growing into oneself and the process of like self-exploration and growth. And that is like the heart of the story to me, is like these two parallel like women's lives as they grow and like come into their own and also fall in love. So I think it was like, I think that having them focus so much on what the other makes was like a conscious decision that I made in order to show how they each were like loving the people that my characters were turning into and like turning into in a very like hard won way, I guess. Like they work very hard to reach what, like to become who they are, and what they offer the world is something that requires a lot of effort on their part and commitment and dedication. And so I liked the idea of them recognizing what the other makes and does, and have that be kind of like an entry point to who the other person is.
Yeah. But I think that's also so romantic, the thought of like appreciating what the person you love like appreciates enough to create. Like that's like a form of loving them, really.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
And also, I'll just mention on the cover, I just love so much like how it has the two, stand-ins for the characters. Because there was this question like, should we have them on the cover or should we have something else? And we decided like, let's have objects that represent them.
I love the cover so much. It's a great cover. Okay, so I realized there was a question I wanted to ask earlier, so I'm going to loop back around to this question because I'm realizing that not everybody here may have read the book yet, and so they might not know Emilie and Sara as well as we do. And so I think a fun way to get to know a character is to be like, okay, what's like the 3 things that you will find in their bag? So for Emilie and Sara, like for each of them, what's like 3 things you'll find in their bag for people who want to know them just a little bit better?
Okay. I mean, Sara is like keys, phone, driver's license. Like,
we love a practical girl.
Yes. Like, no frills when it comes to this sort of thing. Whereas I feel like Emilie would be like, first, like, also, well, this is cheating, but I can't stick to the rules. So, but like Sara would have like this tiny bag that has like those 3 things. And Emilie would have this like deep bag that's like overflowing with stuff probably, and has like receipts and, mints and like lipstick and lotion and, just like everything I think she would have. And she would also like just constantly be losing things in it.
Do you tend to move through the world like Sara or Emilie in that way?
If I was not so ashamed, I would show you the bag that's on my desk. It's not large, but it's quite full of many things.
Look, there's nothing wrong with being prepared.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Okay, so to kind of go back to cooking and flavors and stuff, I really enjoy, there's like a few scenes that I'm thinking of in particular where cooking is used as kind of like an emotional experience between 2 characters or more than that. So what do you think is like romantic about cooking a meal with someone?
Oh, gosh, I mean, so much. Like, I think, deciding to like do something together, right? In the first place, it's like, I want to spend like that it's like, I want to spend time engaging with you. Like, I don't want to just like sit and watch a movie. That's great too. But like, I want to like spend this time with you, like in the kitchen, doing this thing together. I think that there's a process of like, we each figure out like what we're better at. Like when my wife and I, for example, are like in the kitchen, like she'll do like the prep and she'll like make the drinks, and then I'll do like the stuff on the stove. And like, you know, it's like we have our rhythms in how we cook and how we prepare a meal.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to eat it. Afterwards, then you get to sit and like, hopefully you get to like light a candle and you get to like have a conversation. And I think that there's a really cool dynamic too between switching between the type of conversation that you have when you're cooking something and then the type that you have when you're like sitting and facing somebody and just like enjoying and not really doing another thing at the same time. It just, so yeah, what a great question. I love that. What do you tell me what you think?
I mean, I think it's kind of what you're describing when you're talking about like how you and your wife have like your rhythms and like different activities that you do. There's something like really romantic and like honestly kind of sexy about being like, okay, that's the thing you're good at. Go do that thing. And this is the thing I'm good at. And together we're going to make a whole experience. Like, I don't know. There's something really cool and like, and wonderful about it's like, it's a thing of like recognizing each other's talents. It's a thing of like completing like this moment for each other. And like, oh, we make such a good team. Like, there's nothing sexier than making a good team, I think.
Yes.
But also, like, I don't know. When I think about cooking, I think about like the slow build of flavors. Like, I'm thinking about your gumbo scene that you were just talking about, and like how that slow build of flavors. There's just, I don't know. I find everything romantic because I'm a romance writer and my brain's broken. But there's just something about like, it really feels like it mirrors a good relationship of like all of these different things kind of coming together and each individual ingredient being crucial and balancing something else out. It reminds me of a good relationship, and I find that very romantic.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a sap all the time. Yeah. Did you find yourself ever using like a certain aroma or flavor or type of flour or type of liquor to represent either like a character or a certain feeling or trait of that character? Like, I know obviously we have the titular Yerba Buena, but any other examples?
Well, my mind went straight to Sara, which I know is not my book. That's your book. But you do that so beautifully with the smell that is associated with Sara. It's vanilla
and mint. And then her, like, Chloe is always represented by anytime a lime is mentioned, and Sara is anytime strawberries are mentioned.
I love that. That's so cool.
Basically, I'm asking, are you insane like me when you're writing?
No, not quite that way. I mean, I didn't assign scents, I don't think, to them. I'm trying to think about that. I don't think that I did. You know, I think that it was more like, I really had this sense of like that Sara has had to develop this very like kind of hard exterior. Like, she's a very kind person, but like you can't she only lets a few people know her, you know, and it's like a big process. So like, I really thought of her as someone who could like pack a bag like in it like 3 minutes with everything that she had and like be out the door. Like, you know, so that's not at all a scent, but it's like a sense and a feeling of the character that I was working on was like this, someone who could just get up and go. And then for Emilie, like, I had the sense of her as somebody who kind of, you know, I think I've already said that she drifts, but she kind of drifts, but she also kind of stays. And she's also like very like willing and like open to like, you know, taking on anything anyone wants to ask her to do or to be. And so I would think I was very much like internal with them in that way. I didn't quite like assign anything particular to them, I think. Though I also think that probably if I reread it, I'd be like, oh, that one, you know, like this scent, this image, this color was me, and this one was Sara.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. Like, it's endlessly fascinating to me, and also so mysterious and different every time for me, like how characters become who they are.
I know. I'm literally listening to you describe this, and I'm thinking like, I gotta figure out who my next characters are because I miss character work. I love character development. Isn't it just so fun?
It's so fun. So tell me how you do it. Like at the beginning stage, what do you do?
I mean, it's different every time, but I feel like I always start out with like a type of character. Like I really enjoy like messing around with like archetypes or like kind of like a stock kind of character that you've seen in a bunch of things. Like with One Last Stop, I was really into the idea of like a girl detective character. And then I've also just like, I'm gonna be honest, Jane was like partially inspired by like when I was a kid, I read Remember Me by Christopher Pike. And there's like and then I tried to like write my own ripoff of it when I was like 11. And like the love interest was like this greaser whose name was Johnny Sparks. And like it was like so bad. But like I kind of have always had this idea in the back of my mind of like a hot leather jacket wearing butch who like exists in a liminal space. And I was like, let's pull that back out the vault.
I love it. That's so great.
So I feel like it's a mix of like some type of character that I like have always been attached to that type of character, or I want to like with Sara, it was like I really want to like I don't typically like prom queens. I was not like in with the prom queens in high school. And I was like, wouldn't it be fun to explore that type and learn to love her, you know? Yeah. So that's how it works for me. But now I haven't done it in a hot minute, and I miss character development a lot.
Yeah.
I miss my character sheets.
Yeah, that's so I'm much more like scattered than what you are describing. Like in my process, like I do spend time sitting here thinking about my character, but I find out just like I can't do it too much because I get stuck and I start second guessing myself. And so I have to go straight onto the page and start writing scenes usually. But just the craft talk is making me very excited to get back to work, to get like the writing. I was thinking about that this morning. I've been feeling very tired with book release stuff. And I was like, I would love to write. Like my brain's not quite working well enough at the moment to do that. But like in the next couple of days, like I'd like to just, steal a few moments and turn back to this book that I'm working on.
I'm kind of there too. I get you. Like I just came off tour and I'm like, I can't wait till my brain's back online and I can like get down because I would like to write another thing. But yeah, okay. Let me pull another question out of the Ask a Question. Okay, so Nina, this is your first adult book, and for me, this is my first YA. Me being me, not the person asking the question. What was it like switching genres, and do you have a preference for adult or YA writing? So, do you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, like, I have so many different ways I can answer this question. Like it was the first book that I ever started to write. So in a way, it wasn't so much a switch, but like a very long, drawn out continuation of something that I just never had quite gotten a hold of before. It's also my first third person perspective novel, which was so challenging for me. And I resisted it, as much as I could before realizing I just had to give in. And so that was really difficult. But then like the actual like adult ages of the characters, I found to be very freeing. Like after writing about teenagers for so many stories, to let them grow older, like the simple fact of that was just incredibly liberating to me. And I liked how I could like have these things happen to them when they're teenagers and then like take them like years and years and years beyond that and see how those experiences reverberated throughout, their entire 20s. And that was just like so fun. I felt so much freedom. Like I just like could skip forward like 5 or 10 years. And it was just like very cool. So I think that like I will continue to do both, and I'm writing for younger readers as well. Now too, like, younger children. And I like having I like having the flexibility to be like, what am I in the mood for? Do I want to write a picture book? Do I want to write like a chapter book? Do I want to write for adults? Do I want to write these teen stories and just keep like moving? I think I got to a point where I was like, I always try to do something new. And like my last YA was a ghost story, which was very fun and very new. And so like, I keep wanting to do new things. Yeah. So how about you? How was the
Well, it's funny that you use the word freeing, because that's also how I would describe going from adult to YA. Because one of the things that YA does is it gives you the room for your characters to make worse choices, which is like convenient for plot reasons. It's like, but it's also just like really fun to like let your characters like not have to live up to the standards of like what a rational adult acts like, and like let them make the worst possible call. Let them just be pure id, is really, really fun. So I really enjoyed that a lot. And I feel like the reverse of like, you are having the experience of like, let's, develop out from like, the trauma of your teen and adolescent years and see like, how does that develop into adulthood? And for me, it was like the first time of getting to like play around in like the this is like actively where all of that formative stuff is happening, which is really interesting and fun. I do miss adult. Honestly, I miss on like a shallow level. I miss like getting to write spicy scenes because I am a romance writer. So I miss that. But it's hard to say if I have a preference. I do think that like adult romance is like always going to be home for me. But I would love to do more in YA.
Yeah. Love that. So great.
Yeah. Okay. So let me get back to my own questions. Okay. So not to bring the vibe down, but I feel like we need to talk about grief because I read a lot of your books. I do have to say that Everything Leads to You has a special place in my heart because it was my first Nina Lacour, and then I read the others. But and that was like years ago, like way before I was even published. I was like, let me get this off the shelf. Yeah, I mean, who could have guessed I read your romance first?
I'm glad. I do love that book. I worked very hard on it.
Yeah, but I know that in your body of work, that grief is a thread in many of your stories, and I love the way that you write about it. And I don't know. I'm going to spring this quote on you again, like I did last time we talked, where you wrote, I thought that it was more likely the opposite. I must have shut grief out, found it in books, cried over fiction instead of the truth. And then it goes on to be another beautiful passage about grief and how you can process things through reading about them. I believe, is that one from We Are Okay? Yeah. So would you like to talk a bit about how you see that come through in your own writing, and how you hope that people who are grieving are able to maybe process through reading something you've written?
Yeah. I mean, I think it resonates very much for me in my life. Like I've always looked toward stories or songs or art in order to understand my own experiences and feelings or explore them like before I've had to go through those things myself. I think that it's always my best way to process how I feel. Like, I apologize for the car horn. I'm in San Francisco in my office on mission. It's very loud. I need to get some good headphones, but have not yet. So I like We're Okay, for example, like I wrote that book like just as I was grieving. Like I was grieving multiple things when I wrote that book. And it was just like the best way for me to process what I was feeling. And I guess like the process is one thing, but it's like I was able to like make something out of how I feel, which I think sometimes that is a wonderful, healthy thing. Sometimes I think I skip over the process of like actually going through the grieving myself. And I'm like, here, I'll go into this book that I'm writing and to this character that I'm writing. And through that, like somehow, I'll be doing it on my own too. But it's just like, I don't know. I just really believe in like writing and making things out of what we feel like as humans. Like for me, that's just like the only way I know what to do with those like hard feelings.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also really difficult to describe a feeling that big unless it's like what you're actively going through, or have been through. Yeah. And I don't know, I really adore the way that you write about grief, because grief has been like a big part of the last 10 years of my life. And I think for so many of us coming out of the last couple of years, grief is very present in our lives. And so I'm very thankful that you have so many wonderful words we can read about grief.
Oh, thank you, Casey.
Okay, let's do another. Ooh, we're up to 7 questions in the chat. Okay. Somebody says, today I heard your book described as sad, sentimental, your books, plural, described as sad, sentimental, and sapphic. That's such a good brand. What books similar to this vibe would you recommend? Also, just in general, a great description of your brand.
Well, that's very nice. Gosh, what's similar to this vibe? I have such a hard time like in public live spaces knowing what to recommend.
Same.
I always draw a blank. But I will say there's a book that I really love, and it's I wouldn't say that it's similar, but I would say that it has all of those qualities in it. Which is the book Charis by Carolina de Robertis, which I just love so much. And it has all of those things. So if you're looking for those things, I definitely recommend Charis.
Literally writing this down.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And it's very, very different. Like I'm not comparing my writing to Carolina's, but that book is gorgeous and sad and sapphic and sentimental. And also many other things.
I feel that way also about Melinda Lowe's work, I think.
Yes, definitely.
Great question. Somebody wants us to type it in the chat. Charis. Thank you, ER. Already on it. Oh my God. Love having a bookseller on demand.
Yes.
Okay, amazing. Great question. Okay, let's go back to mine. Okay, so as we kind of mentioned before, you've been in the game for a minute doing queer YA and now adult. How would you say, like, how would you compare your experience publishing queer books, maybe 5 years ago versus now?
Let's see. I mean, maybe I'm gonna go back further.
Go back as far as you want to go.
Go back 10 years. I'm like, what was 5 years? Like, what was I doing 5 years ago? I can't even remember. Time has just really, I can't follow it anymore. But I will say that like in the beginning of my writing career, I kind of like when I was working on Everything Leads to You, I had this thought that was like, it's really important to me to write this love story between these two queer girls. And it's really important that like I give them, like it's a story that has some sadness in it, but also that it has a lot of like happiness in it too. And it is like a sweet romance. And I really wanted to do that. It was very important. But I also felt that it probably would not like reach the kind of audience that a book, like if I had written a similar book, but with straight characters, I thought that it would have reached a wider audience. But so it was like this decision that I made where I was like, it's fine. And I'll have a little niche audience and it'll be great. And so I did it. And I think that's true. I mean, the book, did well, but like it did have a niche audience. So it's not like a huge, like seller or anything like that. And I think that then like when I wrote We Are Okay, and again, I kind of had that same sort of feeling like, all right, I'm going to write this story. And at first I knew it was a grief story. And then I was like, oh, also like she and this girl who showed up at her door were in love and had this relationship before. And now she's dealing with like, this ex-girlfriend / best friend, complicated romantic situation as well. Like, and I thought, okay, like, I don't know. I didn't have like grand expectations for how it would do. I was just like very much like in the process of like knowing that it's what I wanted to write. And then it did so well, and it won the Prince, and it was like such this like amazing, like no other book that I had written had been read so widely, and like it was just really incredible. And so I did see like a change in a way in terms of that, like awards committees and, you know, groups of people were like really like ready to embrace that book. And I do think that kind of signified for me an important turning point in what I could write with. And then now with Yerba Buena, like I had no idea when I was writing this book, like even though it was just a few years ago or a couple of years ago now, that it would like reach the audience that it's reaching. And like now here we are, and it's like very much in the mainstream, and like it's like, you know, it's really nice to know that like I can write the stories that feel like very authentic to me and that reflect my experience and queerness in a way that that's important, and also that they can have the ability to reach. So I think that's my very long, but it's like the arc of my understanding that I can write and what it will mean for my career.
I love that. Yeah. It's, I mean, I feel like when I think of the list of YA authors that we have to thank for how many queer YA books there are now, I feel like your name is at the top of my list. So shout out to you for doing all of that work.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been great.
Yeah. Speaking of your body of work, I'm not sure. I hope that everyone knows that you have written a picture book, but in case they don't, could you tell us a little bit about it and why you wrote it?
Yes. I wrote a picture book called Mama and Mommy and Me in the Middle. I have a whole bag of them next to me because I'm about to read to my daughter's class tomorrow morning. And she demanded that each of her classmates gets a copy.
Oh my God.
There go my author copies, but okay. So this is my picture book. It was illustrated by Kehlani Juanita, who was just fantastic, and illustrated when Aiden became a brother, and Magnificent Homespun Brown, and all sorts of other wonderful picture books. And I wrote it just to reflect like the experience of a little girl whose one of her moms is traveling for work, and so she stays home with the other mom, and it's like the week goes by and she misses the mom that's traveling but has fun with the mom at home. And it's just kind of a slice of life book, but with these queer parents. And I'm just very happy that it's in the world.
I love it. I love it. Oh my God. I can't wait. I need to get that for my nephews.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that about that book so that they could buy it, because they should.
Thank you.
Okay, I was just scrolling through the questions and I saw this really, really interesting one in the chat. So I'm going to read this one. To me, one of the most important characters in Yerba Buena was Annie, more so in how she lives on in Sara, both through trauma and the importance that comes from being your first love. Did Annie's existence make it more difficult to then build your central romance around Emilie, a character that may not have brought Sara trauma, but also didn't bring her to queerness?
Yeah, what a question.
I know. That's like, there's levels, there's layers.
I know. Thank you. Yeah, it was very hard. So Annie is Sara's first love. And I actually think that that's something, well, I was about to say that with YA, I'll still say it, even though it's not quite true with Everything Leads to You, because the narrator in that book, Emmy, has had this like tumultuous relationship with this girl, Morgan, before she falls in love with Ava. But anyway, I think in a lot of my YA work, like I'm exploring first love. And in Yerba Buena, I explore first love, but that's not the central love story. Mm-hmm. And yet it kind of is. So like Sara's first love ends in very tragic circumstances, which I wrestled with a lot, especially like coming from a tradition of like tragic things befalling queer characters.
Yeah.
And
oh, especially lesbians.
Yes, exactly. Yes, right, of course. Especially lesbians. I was very like conscious of it. I was very worried about it. I pushed against it. I resisted it. I tried other options, and I was like, this is the story, like, you know, and so I'm going to stick with it. So I stuck with it. But that love that Sara has for Annie really lives on with her. And I don't want to spoil it, but like part of her connection to Emilie also relates to Annie in a way. Like they do connect for her in a way that is like deeply unsettling for Sara, but also very enticing to her. And so part of Sara's journey through the story is kind of like figuring out what that means. Like, what does it mean that this like new woman that she's falling in love with reminds her so much of this girl that she was in love with and who she's never told anybody about what happened to her and how it impacted her. And so that was a really just like challenging but gratifying aspect of the book to explore. And like, what does it mean to love someone if you've loved someone so deeply before and can't really figure out how to let that other person's memory go? Like, do you need to? What do you need to share with the other person? Like, these were all ideas that were floating through my head as I was writing that dynamic.
Wow, that was okay. Shout out to question asker. Amazing question. Okay, so I have a question for you, which is, let's say in an imaginary world, there could be a film adaptation of Yerba Buena. Do you ever think, like, fantasize about like a dream cast?
Well, I love that question, and I do, but I also can't say any details out loud because I can say exciting news, which is that it's been optioned for a TV show, for a limited series. And that my friend Alana K. Arnold, who I think is on this, I saw Alana say hello. Alana and I are co-writing the pilot right now and currently waiting for notes. And it's all very exciting. And there is casting news, but has not been announced at all. So I have to be very coy in my answer. But speaking of casting news, Casey.
Like, I knew I had to give you that opening because you were like, I want to talk about it before we went live.
I do. Yeah, we can't not talk about Red, White, and Royal Blue and the casting news. So please tell everybody, tell us everything. Tell us more than you have said online.
Oh, okay. All right. Like, you're going to get the exclusive.
Yes.
Well, first of all, I am so excited to hear about Yerba Buena being optioned. That makes me really, really happy. And I can't wait to watch it and cry. I'm definitely going to cry. But yeah, we announced yesterday the main two actors, which are Taylor Zakar Perez as Alex and Nicholas Galitzine as Henry. And I think they're both amazing. They're both they're slightly older than the characters in the book. We're doing some things. Well, I say we. I am not involved. It's not the same. It's like sometimes when you option something, you're like involved, and sometimes you option something and you just like get phone calls and you're like, oh, okay. And so far with the team that's doing the Red, White, and Royal Blue movie, I mostly get phone calls, but they're always like phone calls I'm really excited about, you know. Okay. And so I've read the script and I know that we're kind of aging them up a little bit to definitely like make it really distinctly adult and not YA. And also because that's like a thing that like even now I really struggle with, like marketing the book as adult when people being like, wait, what? It's not YA? Because it's not. And so we're making it very distinctly adult with like a very, you know, we want it to be a little sexy, a little mature, but like still very much like the heart of what the book is. And so we have two actors who I think are like really going to do an amazing job embodying that. And kind of making it. I mean, I wrote the book when I was like 25 and now I'm 31 and I'm like, man, if I had lived my whole 20s, I probably would have made them older. But I was 25 and I was like, I don't feel like I can write about being anything older than 22 at this point. So that's them, and then we have most exciting news today, which is that our president is being played by the one and only Uma Thurman, the legend herself. Like, I can't. I mean, this is so. I would not post this online because I don't want to make her comfortable, but I did have a poster of her on my dorm room wall.
Oh my
In
gosh.
college. So it's like a very like full circle gay moment.
Was it like the Pulp Fiction
Oh,
poster?
it was the Pulp Fiction where she's got the gun around her finger and her feet up in the air, and she's like laying on the bed with the like nudie mag. Yeah.
Haircut, just iconic.
Yeah, iconic. Yeah, so I'm just very excited. They're gonna start shooting soon, and allegedly it will be out sometime next year. Yeah, so it's all happening. So
amazing.
Very exciting. Yeah, so that's the news. But back to Nina. Back to Nina. Okay, let's hit some of these questions, and then I have like 2 more for you that you can fly through them pretty quickly. Okay, so let's see. How about okay, so a couple people talked about the sibling relationships in the book, and I mean, especially Emilie and Colette, but just in general, all of the sibling relationships in the book. Can you talk about how you developed and came up with those relationships? Because they are such a huge part of the heart of the book.
Yeah. Well, they each have aspects of my own sibling relationship, which I have a brother who has the same age difference between Sara and her brother, Spencer. So like, I know what it's like to be like, as we get older, the age gap, feels much less, but like to be a teenager and have like a child as a little brother, like I know how that feels. And then for Emilie and Colette, like my brother and I like make gumbo together, and we like, talk about our family and like all of that stuff. So those aspects kind of reflect, it's just like different parts. So I had like some point of reference for each sibling relationship, but then like it's fiction, it's not my real, it's not my real life, neither one. So I think I'm just like fascinated by sibling relationships because like, they're endlessly intriguing to me, because it's like, you have the same parents, you have like similar dynamics. And so sometimes there are things that you like completely get that only you two would, understand. And, you can like have this very unique vantage point to like your own little family. But then also, every individual is raised in a different way and has a different way of viewing things. So then there are also these things where you can feel this like giant disconnect in like how you perceive your family of origin and your life. And so, and like to start kind of in a similar place and then go off into different directions. I just find it fascinating. So that was part of the novel that I just very much enjoyed exploring.
Yeah. Yeah, I love those relationships too. Okay, so I have 2 more. We have like 2 minutes left, so I'm gonna like rapid fire like 2 more questions. Okay, and I'm apologies in advance for asking you this because I know I blank whenever somebody asks me. But have you read anything lately that you really loved?
I mean, Shara, of course.
That's cheating. That's cheating.
I mean, I think that's my complete answer.
Okay, cool. We'll take it. Ding, accepted. Okay. And do you have a favorite tea and or a favorite cocktail and or a favorite flower?
Oh my gosh. Okay. A Vieux Carré is my favorite cocktail, a classic New Orleans cocktail. I think I probably inherited my love for them. Like tea, I love peppermint tea, but like not just any peppermint tea, like really good, fresh, like delicious, like when you smell it and it like clears out your sinuses, like the like most fresh, delicious peppermint tea is my favorite. Mm-hmm. And if I can't have that, then I like a black tea with like milk and honey. Mm-hmm. And then I love too many flowers. I can't narrow it down.
I've recently been really into ranunculuses.
I love ranunculus. I love ranunculus. I love peonies. I mean, I just love so many.
It feels fitting that you like very complicated flowers with lots and lots and lots of petals. What a writer move. All right, ER, if you want to hop back on, I think we are done. Nina, this has been so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. What amazing questions, and thank you to all of the audience for their
such great questions, you guys.
Yes, awesome. Thank y'all so much. I learned so much about both of you. This is great. So I want to encourage folks. I just dropped a link in the chat for I Kiss Shara Wheeler if folks haven't bought that yet. And I put links to all the books that folks mentioned. So, go through, click those. But we're here tonight to celebrate Yerba Buena, and you can buy that book by clicking the teal link at the bottom of the screen. It's one click, and it'll take you there. It really, really, really helps Charis, which is a lesbian-owned feminist bookstore, when you buy your books from us. It really, really does. It makes all the difference in the world, especially during these hard times. The other thing that really helps us is a lot of folks may have already donated when you registered. So thank you for doing that. If you didn't and you would like to do so now, all of our events are sponsored by our nonprofit Charis Circle, and donations help us be able to do all these awesome events. We have a huge slate of Pride Month events. Obviously, we are gay all year long, all year strong, but June is a special time for our people. And so we would like for y'all to come back to Charis multiple times. So check out our full slate of events at charisbooksandmore.com. Follow us on social media at Charis Books and More. And just be our social media friend, because we are doing so much this month and we would not want you to miss any of it. So, Casey, congratulations on all your success. Thank you so much for being a wonderful interviewer. And Nina, thank you for this beautiful book. We are so thrilled that it is getting out in the world and reaching all new audiences. Lots of new readers are coming your way. So I hope you both stay safe and well. Thank you.
Thank you, ER. Thank you so much for hosting us. And Casey, thank you again. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you, guys.